Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now getting closer to the end of July of 2023, and given that Disney has been going through an extremely rough year for this, of course, 2023 year for everything related to the parks, the merchandise, the movies, the TV shows, and everything to do with Bob Iger's situation and what happened with Indiana Jones 5 and how that's also creating a domino effect over at Lucasfilm and how it's not a good model for Star Wars right now. However, when it all comes down to Jon Favreau, he had a couple of things to say about George Lucas that is actually quite revealing and goes to show you the true nature of everything Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm, and Disney as a whole. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know Jon Favreau met quite a number of limitations when it came to the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian Season 3 and how Kathleen Kennedy was really the big and major cause of why those two shows specifically were pretty much failures across the board for Star Wars fans. Now, the Book of Boba Fett had its moments where you had Din Djarin, you had Luke Skywalker, you had a couple of moments where Boba Fett really stood out, but for the most part, for me guys, Boba Fett as a show did not work, and it did not universally actually agree with a lot of Star Wars fans out there. But when we focus on Jon Favreau, he was able to kind of really lay down the groundwork about what really happened with George Lucas, and this is actually quite revealing because it does match directly up with what's going on with the Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Leslie Headland, and John Watts. Let's get into it. Now, with Disney and Lucasfilm completely banking on Ahsoka being successful to succeed and to course-correct the Star Wars franchise, however, recently Jon Favreau was able to confirm and provide some very revealing news revolving around George Lucas. Now, Favreau went on to state the following. Well, when we were in principal photography for Mandalorian Season 3 and getting that rolling, one major request that really I think took us by surprise by Kathleen Kennedy is that she didn't want George Lucas on set or anywhere near the location shots that we were embracing for this installment. She had informed myself, Dave, and many others that were working on the third one that she didn't want George around because she didn't want any kind of cast or crew to be encouraged by different ways of storytelling or ideas and concepts provided by George himself to be used for the actors and actresses on set for the last season. I was in a very complex position where I had to respect that, and it was a tough pill to swallow. But what can you do? You know, I was working on that season apart from having so many people holding creative values for the show. Now, let me just stop here quick, guys, about what Favreau is saying. Now, basically what happened for Season 3, for those of you that do not know, we touched on this lightly for Mando 3, is that Kathleen Kennedy did indeed banish George Lucas from the sets of Mandalorian Season 3. And she did the same exact thing for the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. And that just goes to show you how radical and extreme Kathleen Kennedy really is, and how it also matches up with what she has been doing behind closed doors for all of those projects. Now, look, I know that a lot of people did not like Season 3 for multiple factors. We talked about this many, many times. You know, the constant bait and switch, the lack of linear storytelling, Grogu's development was just very much, a nonsense involvement in there, in my opinion at least. We had a lot of things that were very problematic with Season 3, and nobody really saw this coming. Because coming out of Season 2, which, by the way, I believe was peak Star Wars, was really where it had so many different directions it could have gone in, because it introduced Luke taking Grogu into training, and how the Book of Boba Fett kind of dismantled that, but I digress. When you look at stuff like this, about how Favreau was able to confirm that Kennedy banished George from the set of Mando Season 3 because she had this specific vision of doing her own thing, taking the show in a completely different direction, and really just kind of steering things in a different path. And that just goes to show you that this is exactly why I firmly believe the Acolyte is going to blow, Skeleton Crew is going to fail come this holiday season. In fact, they're trying to dance around it right now when it comes to Skeleton Crew as to why there's no release date, why they won't give us a release date month even, is because they are still trying to fine-tune the show, and everything happening with the strikes right now, it's really bringing everything to a halt. So that's also problematic. We know that major films out there like Deadpool 3 also came to a halt, so it's impacting everybody almost. So on top of this, he goes on to continue. That was the one thing that I think bothered me the most. Not having George around also made production harder and more difficult for us. Sometimes you need guidance from the very soul that created Star Wars, and not having any availability for that with Season 3 made things all the more tougher. But Kathy had this vision she wanted to pursue, and I had to accept that, even though I didn't thoroughly agree with her approach. I can also confirm that we are doing things differently with the 4th installment. We have this plan, you know, to sort of reset it and bring it back to the basics, and we are happy to have George back. But we are facing numerous delays, so I can't really tell you when that season is going to arrive, but we are looking at 2025, the earliest right now. That's all about I can really say, so I do apologize. It's a tough time right now for creators. Now, look, I've said this many times, guys. How many people are really going to stand around and wait for Mandalorian Season 4 by 2025? This is a very big question. I know some people out there will wait, but I think that the casual viewership, they're going to forget about this show. There's a lot of people that are going to forget about it, and I think that could have also played a role into why people were so let down over Season 3, because they waited 2 whole years. 2 whole years, and we got what we got with Season 3 because of Kathleen Kennedy, and that was a major letdown. I think that's a similar scenario to what happened with The Last Jedi 2. Not only was it the storytelling, but we had to wait 2 whole years from The Force Awakens till The Last Jedi to see Luke Skywalker really just doing his thing, and, well, we got what we got in the final cut of Episode 8, and it was a complete downer, to say the least. Depressing, must I add. So, there's a lot of things coming out of this. The fact that George was banished, not only from Season 3 of Mando, but also from the Acolyte, is all the more reason to want nothing to do with the Acolyte series. This is why I really just have no excitement for it at all. I have no faith in this project. We know that Leslie Headland, by the way, is somebody, an individual, if you will, that cares nothing about the fans, nothing about George Lucas. In fact, she is actually purposely destroying the philosophy of the franchise that George built up ever since 1977, and that's bothering him. He has gotten into heated exchanges over at Disney and everything happening on that front. So there's a lot of problems that need very major fixing, and it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and I'm not even quite sure if John and Dave are going to be able to carry that weight, to be honest with you guys. So anyways, I would like to hear your take on this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.